In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to button the back of this modern reproduction chair. Although there's a lot of hardboard inside this chair, it is actually very strong, so well worth doing. I can't replace these factory inserted buttons, but I'm going to put my buttons in the way that I would button a traditional chair. The first thing I do is carefully remove this hardboard back cover so that I can use it again. I then take all the staples out from around the frame that are holding the front cover of the chair in place. The next thing to do is just prise open the arms of the buttons and push them through. If your chair was fixed with bits of twine, you just cut the twine and release it so you can pull the buttons out. You're not going to use these buttons again. Once all the buttons are removed, you can remove the front cover, and I'm not removing the foam on this chair because it's very good molded foam and it's very well fixed in place, and it is possible to re-upholster it without removing it on this chair. Take a good look at the buttoning, the style, how they've pleated it when you take it off, because you're going to need to put those pleats back, which we will look at now that we re-upholster the chair. Quick reminder again, when you're buttoning, that you need to allow extra to get into those buttonholes. And if your old top cover is on and you're measuring before you strip the chair down, remember that where the button is, the fabric is going to go deeper. Okay, so you need to add just a little bit extra onto that. So coming down the front exactly the same way, find your deepest bit, add a bit for your hang on, and then if you come down, another way to do it to the seat is just find the point on the back where that is, so your sort of fingers are kind of parallel. Then you can whip your measure around and go down and add on your turns. So I made that about 117 with a good hang on, so let's see what they allowed. A couple of inches, and they've got 114, so yeah. I'm perhaps being a little bit over generous, but I would much rather do that. Now if we take a bird's eye view of the old pattern piece on the new fabric, you can see I've left a good couple of inches at the bottom to get hold of to turn up, and I shall do the same all the way around. And if we look more closely at this piece of fabric, you can see there's a blue stripe on the far left and a grey stripe on the far right. So don't take for granted that that your fabric is necessarily going to have a pattern that you want in the center of it. So you can see with this one that I've put the old pattern piece further towards the right, because I want a blue stripe running down the middle. And I'm going to cut that now as a rectangle, and then I will trim it to shape when it's on the chair. You now have what looks like a huge piece of fabric on your chair, but you'll watch that shrink as we put the buttons in. And the next thing we do is make the buttons. So I have a few bits left from the arms, and I'm just using these buttons that I'm going to make by hand. If you're an upholsterer and you're doing a lot of this, you can actually get a machine that is much better and much quicker. So I have a little pattern piece that I made, and we just cut out a piece of fabric. The button that you're going to cover have these little barbs on the side to hook the fabric into, and they just go sit into an end piece, and you just push those in, and I tend to give them a little bit of extra help with a hammer. I'm just going to do the buttons as I go along. I want a grey button in the middle of my blue stripe, So what you do, you just put your button in the middle, and that gives you an idea of how much extra you need around the sides. Again, depends on the fray of your fabric. Hook one side over. You've got to work those in with your nails, which isn't very good for your nails, but there are not so many buttons. Get those sides in and then hook the other sides in. It's the easiest way to do it, so you don't lose too much fabric. The fabric can slip a bit, and just work your way around. So once you've got that button completely covered and the barbs are holding it, you're then going to snip some of the middle out. And you might think, why do we make it so big in the first place? Because like with everything on the chair, you need something to get hold of, okay, to pull around. And we're snipping it out so that there's not too much bulk for the bit that goes on the bottom. So the next thing we do is sit it over, and that should clip into that the top. But because you've got now a bulk of fabric, it's not always easy to do it. So I give it a little helping hand. Okay, so once that's all on and it's held in place, and it might look a bit bashed, but don't worry, you're not going to see it. It's more important that that's held in place, and then you have a button to go onto your chair. And the buttons that I'm using are 19mm buttons, and I buy them in bulk. The first thing we want to do when putting the front in is make sure that it's really, really level. And a good guide is the button hole points. And I've actually got a screw here that's telling me where the centre is. So once I'm happy that that is in the centre, I'm just going to anchor that in place in a couple of points. And you want to make sure it's straight, going straight this way as well. Okay, you then need to find the centre on the front. Now you can do that again by feeling for the buttonholes, but I'm quite lucky on this chair because I've got this this pleat in the foam. Okay, so I can find the centre here and then line that up with my first buttonhole. The easiest buttoning on a chair is when the central buttonhole is at the top, because you can just work everything down. Unfortunately, this one isn't. The top holes are either side, but we must get this one in to centralize all the fabric. So at the same time as I'm pushing that fabric in there, I'm making sure the pleats are coming down. Again, pleats always come down, and that they will, so that they will sit into the buttonholes either side, and the same for the ones that come down underneath. So just to give you an idea, I've got channels on the foam here, so again I want it to look even, but we'll work all that in as we go on. The tools I'm going to need is some waxed upholstery twine and a double-ended sharp needle to push through, and the button. So the first thing we do is cut a length of twine. That looks huge, but I need a good bit on the back. Thread up the needle. Okay, so I'm going through slightly off center on this stripe. Find your hole on the back and pull through. Okay, thread on your button. Thread your needle again. Come over a little way. Okay, so you've got a good bit in between. Find that hole, don't lose your other end at the back, and then you've got your button here. Okay, so my button is now in place, and if I pull that tight, it gives me a little bit of play before I fasten it off. So I can set a nice deep pleat here, and one the other side, and because I've got these channels, that's giving me a good guide as to where that next button is going to go. Okay. You can alter these pleats a little bit as you go along, and this regulator, which is the most useful tool for an upholsterer, it's like a long needle with a flat end and a hole in, but for this you can use that to sort of work your way into the pleats if you need to move them. And I also at the same time the same thing on this hole at the bottom and over here, so we can sort of get an idea of where we want our pleats. Again, remember to keep everything even, so when you can feel for your next hole down below to make sure you've got a good line up of your fabric coming down here. Work those pleats roughly to where you think you're going to need them, okay, so that they look even. So when you're happy with your buttoning, you come to the back of the chair. Now the buttons that came off this is a factory built chair, which is why it's cardboard. A traditional chair would have webbing and hessian and possibly horsehair, either horsehair or foam, but this actually for me is quite unusual. So these came through at the factory and they've got these nice little legs on, very easy, but I can't get these back. So I'm going to do it the traditional way, and whether you have board or hardboard, it will be the same. So I cut myself a good thick strip because I've got to make sure it's not going to go back through that hole. So we can make a slip knot, wedge the fabric in place and pull that tight. But again, make absolutely sure that that fabric isn't going to go through the foam. Okay, so with the slip knot I can play with it a little bit more. I've put 2 more buttons in, and now you can see how it's all taking shape. The pleats are nice and deep. Try to get everything even. Much easier if you've got a plain fabric or a fabric that isn't quite so geometrical. And you can see now how we come back down to these next buttons. So at the same time as trying to keep the pleats nice and deep, keeping everything symmetrical, I'm also trying to keep everything running vertically and horizontally, okay, across the chair. So you just have to keep an eye on your fabric and just keep maneuvering everything. If I pull this up, as you can see, to level that off, then this crease here, I lose some of that fold, and it's really important to keep those folds down, because otherwise when everything gets pulled out, they can almost disappear. So the more fabric you can keep in those creases, the better. So a quick look at the next one that I'm going to do. I'm going to do this one next. But at the same time, I'm thinking about what's coming down here. So I need to keep everything level, whereas this is running in line, this one runs in line. And when we look at the back, we need to keep that straight. Don't worry about all this bulk, because we make folds on the back. But the important thing is just to try and keep everything coming down level, because if you fan everything out, then you're going to have too much bulk at the bottom when you want to make these pleats. And you might find that you've got a bit of looseness in here, and that's what's useful about this. You can just tuck that up and tighten those pleats in once you've got those in place. So I'm going to do these two, these two next, and then I'll go up to the top ones as I did with this. Now let's just take a look at where I've got to so far. When we get to the top, these pleats that come over the side, the next ones at the top, follow the pleats of the buttoning. And if you look at this side, you can see where I've kept the pattern straight, and everything is coming around the edge quite smoothly. On this side, I've let the pattern drop. So when we get to this bit, we've then got a great fold to get rid of. Okay, so that's the reason why it's quite important to keep everything straight. If you want to put folds in, you can put folds in. Again, it's always artistic license, but it's just sort of smoother to do it this way. So I'm going to finish all the buttoning, and then we'll take a look, and we will fix the sides when the buttoning's finished. A quick look at how to make the slip knot. The side that you're going to slip, you want to be longer. You're going to make the knot on this side. So you just go over the short piece and around the back of both. Okay, so you've then got a loop. You then take that end through the middle, pull it down. You've got a loop then that you can slip. Okay, and that will go up on the short piece. I've now got all the buttons in the available holes. I've tucked the bottom piece into these grooves, and I'm going to tie off these buttons at the back. So they'll be pulled even more firmly and tied really tightly so they're not going to move. If you don't have these grooves, you can make like a box pleat with the bits at the bottom, so you sort of fold them in and then they will just tuck through the same as this one. Make sure everything is really straight, so I shall come and have another little play with this once I've got the buttons in. Okay, so I'm going to tie those off and then we will go to the outsides. I'm just tying off my last button. I've made my slip knot. If you find that it's tight and it won't slip, it's because these strings on the front under the button have got themselves tangled. So just go and take a look. So what we do then, once they're really firm, I'm going to start at the top, give it a last tug, really firm, and then you just tie them off just with a normal knot. And then you can actually just cut those off. Just snip it off. Okay. One advantage of making sure the thread that slips through the knot is longer, and I wear this glove because the cord, when you've pulled it several times, can cut your hand. You can pull it tight and really hang on to it, and then you can use the other end, the knot end, to sort of make your double knot, still hanging on to the one that slips, and you've got that really extra tight on the front. The next bit I want to do is fix the top down to the arms, and I have put a few temporary sort of pins in to hold it in place as I go along, so I can take those out now. So you can see where the buttons pull in. You can't keep everything completely straight, but again, I want to try and keep it as level as possible, and start to pleat around the back. So while I'm pulling it over, I'm going to be looking at the front at the same time, just to make sure we've got everything level. And this is possibly a good time, if you feel you need to look at the pattern and see how it came off. And if you took a photo before you stripped the chair down, that's quite useful to look at as well. I've come down to ground level so I can look at both sides at the same time, so I can get everything straight, nice and level, nice and firm. I'm just going to remove these temporary pins. So the first thing I'm going to do is just put one staple in the center. Just smooth everything with your hand. Pull it over. Don't pull it so tight that you get ridges and bumps. So it needs to be firm. You want to try and get rid of all the wrinkles on the front, and you will continue to pull, but there's a kind of balance, and you'll find that out. And the good thing about having a nice long bit is I can wedge that under there. Okay, feel down with my staple gun to the bottom of the foam, and I'm just putting that one in while I level up the sides. So I just want to tuck these under and this one over. So what I'm actually going to do here is put a staple in this next piece. And, because I can then play around with what's in between. Another good use for your regulator, because you can shift fabric with that. Okay, see that coming along. So it's going to look even on the back as well as the front. I'm then going to come this way towards this fold, down on here and down on here, and you just keep working at it until you're happy with what you've got, what you can see. Just keep smoothing all the time. Okay, and then just continue around the chair. So the next thing I'm going to do is set this fold in place, and remember it follows the line of the folds on the buttoning. We'll take a look on the back, and we may need to add a couple of little pleats along the side to ease that fabric in. So I've now got 2 more pleats in at the front, and I've come along, I've added 1 small pleat in here, and I've come along to where I'm going to need to make the next one. And then as we come around the corner, we're going to, because this is quite a sharp curve, we're going to have to get some pleats in there. So the first thing I want to do is actually set this elbow pleat, because I can then, just with all the smoothing, I can then try to reduce how many pleats I'm going to need here. And the pleats need to come at the back, so you're not really seeing them at the front, so they're just sort of sitting in neatly across this curve here. Because this video is on buttoning a chair, I'm not going to show here how we fix the rest of the front of the chair. You can watch the full reupholstery of this chair in a 3-part video series. This particular bit is in part 2, and I will leave the links in the description below. If you found this video useful and would like to see more tutorials on soft furnishing and reupholstery, please like, subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when I make more videos. Thanks for watching and good luck with your project.